Lamptey Show. My name's Joey, and I'm joined by Paul.
All right, mate.
And by Neil.
Hello.
Happy Yakubu Day.
Yes.
Yeah, thrilled.
Come on.
Who's the least enthused out of you two?
Me.
Definitely Paul. Definitely Paul.
Why?
I'm well keen.
Why?
Yeah.
Because when was the last time we actually played 90 minutes competitive football? And this is a man who, he was not particularly Mr. Fitness in his prime. So now he's an old man, and no one knows how old he is. I mean, he literally could be anything between 34 and 40. And that's probably pushing a little bit. He could even be older than 40. And it's just like, I'd rather we just played Ponticelli and just give him 16 games and just play someone who, I don't even know why he's here. I have no idea what he's trying to achieve out of this.
Banging the goals.
Banging in goals, exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure he's going to probably finish with the same amount of goals that Sean Goater got for us.
Prolific.
Second highest scorer, African scorer in Premier League history. One guess each for number one.
Drogba.
Not Drogba, no. Neil?
It's not Drogba. Oh, I was going to say Drogba. Kanu?
No. Adebayor.
Adebayor.
I'm quite surprised by that.
Wouldn't unlove then.
No. Let's have moments of the week, shall we? Paul, Yakubu?
No. It was. We tend to have this, being COF fans, where you get two disappointments every Saturday. And the first disappointment comes around about 2 o'clock when you see the team. And you saw the team and you just thought, yeah, Russell Slade's a bloody idiot, isn't he? And then you sort of watch it all unfold. And it's one of those things where you want to be proven wrong. You want to have this gnawing inside you that, no, he has done the right thing by going back to the back four that was so shit against Millwall. It does make perfect sense, but it didn't.
No, it didn't really, did it? That was the first time I'd seen Kevin Foley on Saturday, Paul, and I could see where your antipathy comes from. Did you say that there was a second disappointment?
Well, the second disappointment is then the game itself and the result. But at least you get a pre-warning an hour before. It's a bit like if you're going to watch a film, but the trailer for the film was the trailer of the film, and the trailer being absolutely shit, and you're still going, I'm really excited for this film, and the film turns out to be a shit film.
Have you ever gone to see a film? You're
pre-warned.
Have you ever been to see a film that's had a bad trailer and you've gone anyway?
Oh, I'm trying to think.
Were you a big Star Wars guy? Did you go and watch either of them prequels?
Yeah, I want to watch all three prequels, but some films are sort of untrailer proof, aren't they? So it doesn't really matter what's in the trailer.
Huge fan of the word untrailer proof. Neil, have you either got a moment of the week or have been to see a bad film despite seeing a bad trailer?
Well, funny enough, I've never seen a bad film, which is weird. I just think it must be my standards. I don't not enjoy films.
Really?
They're all fine, but I don't watch good ones as well. So I don't watch Star Wars or the big ones. You know, I watch Apollo 13 over and over again. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. Anyway,
you're highly known for confectionery and Connor Thomas haircut chat. But I don't think.
Am I really?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but I don't think it's widely credited enough how much of a space guy you are.
I bloody love space.
You're a big space guy, aren't you?
Yeah, mad keen. I'm just obsessed with it.
Is that a real thing then? Watching Apollo 13 a lot?
Oh yeah, no, that's actually it's like a monthly thing.
Oh, nice.
I just enjoy just looking at it, and because it's real. I don't like fantasy in any sense. So that happens, so I'm happy to watch it.
No, I thought you were there actually. Yeah. Although I could do with a bit of fantasy at the moment. Have you got a moment of the week?
I was going to say Yakubu, but now Paul's brought up the fact that we changed our team at the weekend, and that feels actually quite crucial. So that will be my moment of the week. Just the whole Paul's tweet actually saying it turns out performances don't matter was nail on head, because the game we spent an hour analysing our trophy game and just talking about how well each of the players have played and how important it was to sort of back that up with a follow-up performance. And in my mind, there are kind of 5 players who'd really shone. So you had Kelly Evans, Turnbull, Thomas, Bevan up front, and Ryan Haynes in my mind as well. And of those players, 2 of them played in the next game. Obviously, Bevan couldn't play because he's injured, but he had the opportunity to play 4 of those high performing players, and he chose to play 2 of them and drop the most impressive Kelly Evans and drop Turnbull after his best performance of the season, and stuff like that. Just why I keep going on about it, but why take the risk of regretting something? I was talking to Paul beforehand, and we were just saying, like, it's probably not the best way to manage, but at least if you stick with the same team, you're not going to regret that, because if it goes wrong, you've done what everybody's asked of you, and you're giving yourself a chance anyway, because like it's a winning team, it's a winning formula. If you don't win, it doesn't matter, but if you do win, I've stuck with a winning team, and it's a win-win situation in a shit kind of way. But he just did everything I didn't want him to do. So yeah, moment of the week turns out not to be Yakubu, and just Russell Slade once again proving to me how little I like him.
Well, I think we're going to get onto a bit more of that in a bit, because we've had a number of people ask about our opinions on Slade, and I think it's a very, very, very tricky one, this, isn't it? Because he's only been here 2 seconds, but he's also been pretty bad for those 2 seconds, hasn't he? Sorry, Paul, you were going to say something.
No, I was just laughing at the fact that Russell Slade's impressing Neil less and less as the games go on, and you do sort of almost think, did we get to Wembley in spite of Russell Slade or because of Russell Slade?
I think we all know the answer to that one, don't we?
You sort of are coming to that conclusion that if he'd have had the choice, we wouldn't have had the back 4 that played as well on Tuesday. And that's just silly, really.
It's difficult, isn't it? I still think that the only way we could have, I know that it's, rewriting history or whatever you want to call it, but I just think the best that we could have hoped for was to have played Premier League teams or top-end Championship teams' youth team, because they weren't going to be physical enough to bully us off the ball, and we had at least a modicum more experience than they did. I think that suited us down to the ground. And fair play, like you say, we played well against Wickham, but they're still a League 2 side, and they changed some of their team for that game, I believe.
6, apparently, including their 2 main strikers.
It does feel a little bit like, and I think a lot of teams need some fortune or whatever to get through, but it does feel like we were afforded a fair amount, and that this wasn't necessarily his master plan, much in the same way that many people don't consider Di Matteo to be a Champions League winner. But there you go. For me, moment of the week is Yakubu. Absolutely pure and simple. I'm just fascinated by it. I think in the end he will be, roughly speaking, similar to Marc-Antoine Fortuné.
Oh God, that's not promising, is it?
Well, he's gonna. I saw somebody. That fucking, the truth that is one random bloke on Twitter who was a Reading fan saying he was shite for us. That was years ago, and I think that the class of the Championship and League One has improved significantly over the last few years. But Yakubu, I can't see, has got a lot better in that period where he's only played a handful of games out in Turkey or whatever. But there's still something so romantic about that idea of, do you ever lose it at that level? Is he just going to get, a chance that drops in the box, or is he going to, take the opportunity off a flourishing Kwame Thomas? Who, Paul, I don't know if you did the same as I, but I assumed there was a mistake when I looked at the bench before the game, because I was like, that's either Connor Thomas, who doesn't play for us anymore, or the Thomas, who's our other Thomas? George Thomas, of course, yeah. But it wasn't, was it? It was in fact Kwame Thomas, who did a goal.
What was it like? I haven't seen the replays.
I was hoping that's where Paul had come in, but I don't know if he's still here.
I lost all sound a minute ago.
So I am still here. I'm just, no one really wants to know my technical issues.
Oh dear. Well, you've made them sound so enigmatic now. I don't know if that's still the case.
Well, the problem, to cut a long story short, wife's got iPad. I'm doing it on my phone. Every so often something happens on my phone, and the volume setting for the notifications and stuff is like max. But because I'm wearing earphones, it's just coming out and just being like 20 dB louder than what you're doing. So every so often I get this, rah! And then it's like, oh, shit. How the hell do I stop this? So, every so often I was just getting deafened by my own phone. Kalame Thomas, I've got a question for you two. It's a very difficult question. Can you identify 3 differences between Ryan Haynes and Jody Jones?
I mean,
yeah.
How
literal do you want us to be?
Yeah.
Okay, so you'd think it's pretty simple. Amazingly, the Coventry Telegraph keep writing in their articles that Jody Jones applied the ball for the goal.
Oh, really?
I'm convinced it was Ryan Haynes. I've watched the highlights. I'm still convinced it's Ryan Haynes. Anyway, let's go back to the very start, where we started like an hour before kick-off when the team came through. And I don't know if I said it on the pod. I've definitely said it to people I've met. I only thought 2 players really didn't have good games against Wickham. One of them was Kyle Reid, but we let him off for that pass through to George Thomas. And the other person was Reece Charles Cook, or Flappy McFlap goalkeeper, as we probably should have called him, because everything he came for, he just flapped at. And luckily, Wickham didn't hurt us, even though he dropped the ball once in the first half where a player had a shot and it hit his own player, and once in the second half where, again, I think we managed to scramble it clear. But you could see that he isn't overly confident at the moment. And it was really interesting that out of the players who retained their place out of the back 5, he was the one who did so. And I know some people don't like Lee Birch. His distribution isn't the best. I don't think he's really done much wrong goalkeeping-wise for him to be dropped for Reece Charles Cook. I didn't see where that clamour was coming from. And then in front of him, he had Nathan Clark, who I still don't get it. I know he's 33. I know he's played N number of games. I don't see how he is aiding the team at the moment. And if you see their third goal, you'll probably be on my side as well, because the third goal is just shocking. And alongside him, the young lad from Derby who has a really cool first name, but hasn't really, he's looked all right. Not great, but he's looked all right. And I think he would have been quite, he was one of the players who's probably coming through the recent spell in acceptable form. And as Joey correctly said, at right back, we had Foley instead of Dion Kelly-Evans. And you just give up at that point, because I don't understand it. I know Foley comes from previous clubs that Russell Slade's managed, which is sort of understandable, but that was Russell Slade's 8th league game. We haven't kept a clean sheet yet. Surely the first thing you do is keep a clean sheet. And if you're bringing Foley in, then surely part of that is he's going to come in to keep a clean sheet. And I don't think he's that defensively solid either. I can't really remember him. No, he's not really a Stuart Pearce fearsome tackler. He's just a average League One right back, and he doesn't offer anything anywhere else on the pitch. So there was a spot in the second half where George Thomas got when he got the ball, George Thomas was 10 yards in front of him, and George Thomas really needed him to bring the ball forward, like bring it 10 yards forward, so George Thomas could then run on and would take the whole attack further forward on the right wing. And he just passed it 5 yards inside to Andy Rose and then stood there because he doesn't have that dynamism to get forward. So he's just a redundant player. You could have any player who's ever played football at right back at the moment, if that's what they're going to do, which is basically stand there and fill a position. And it feels like I'm picking on him. I'm not. It's just a case of sometimes there are obvious differences between the player you can play and the player you are playing. And I think Foley's other big problem is he is Russell Slade's signing. He is a player that Russell Slade's bought in from previous clubs. And if you're not going to like Russell Slade, or Russell Slade hasn't impressed you, watching players like Foley, like Nathan Clark, are going to give you concerns, because you're thinking, well, this is the player he's brought in to aid us, and he's not very good. So do you trust Russell Slade in the summer to bring in more players when the players he's brought in, like, players he knows, aren't performing? But also, listening to the post-match interview where he goes off, to be fair to the guy, he's obviously very angry, but some of the players he's got to be very angry at are players that he's managed at previous clubs and he's brought in. If that had been... Sorry, go on.
What did he say in his post-match?
Basically, he said that players aren't concentrating, that they're not carrying out the game plan, and they're just switching off. So you don't know from not one game to the next, but almost one moment to the next, whether or not they're going to do the basics right. And that's fine, but you're almost like you could have made that comment 3 or 4 weeks ago instead of... And then he came out and went, well, at sometimes we do play good football. And my response to that is, we've got some good footballers in our team. Not many, but when people like Ryan Haynes and Jody Jones interact, it's going to look like good football because technically they're good footballers. Whether or not Jody Jones is a great footballer or will turn into a great footballer is unanswerable. And he's an idiot. He's clearly stupid. He can say everything about him tells you he doesn't have that football intelligence. But when players like him, when people like George Thomas do certain things, they look attractive players because that's what they are. The problem is it's the players around them. Now, what was another really interesting thing was we've changed formation to 4-3-3, and Gadchev came in and played as an anchor man. And I thought he did the job all right. I thought he was having, out of the players on the pitch, he was almost having one of the better games. But when Gadchev, as your anchor man, is having one of your better games, it tells you a lot about the other players around him. And, you go through the goals. The first one, the ball comes up. Nathan Clark, instead of doing what defenders should do, which is head it high and far, he heads it down and near. They pick it up. It's like Ryan Haynes probably should do better. Then Nathan Clark should do better again. Then, Reece Charles Cook doesn't do anything. The ball goes past him, and then Foley ends up kicking it into his own face into the back of the goal. And you're like, well, that sums us up, really. That's just not, you're not doing, at least one of you should have just taken him out or stopped him. And then, as I was trying to explain to Joey that we couldn't possibly equalise because none of our team have ever scored a league goal, Marcus Tugguy does a 1-2 with Callum Riley and then blasts one in from 25 yards, which is still one of the, thinking back, I can't remember a goal for a long time where you were still going, we're not going to score. Oh, shit. How the hell's that gone in?
It was really joyous, weren't it? Because it was just... It's one of the least expected goals I can ever remember at a football match. Because there's been times where Frank Musa, for example, would do something really ostentatious, or even Armstrong against Millwall or something. But you had a sense of them being players that were all right. And so you kind of go, oh, right. But for Tudgay to blute a one in from that distance, like an out-swinging, like into the top corner. And as you say, it was literally, you were like, we have literally got no chance of... Well, no, apparently we have just scored a wonder goal. It was really great, wasn't it?
While you're talking. Just don't mind me.
We were on a funny view of it, I guess, because we were right down the barrel of it and we were at the other end of the pitch. But it looked like he must have been 20, 25 yards out and he just whacks at it.
He is outside the area, yeah.
Yeah. There's part of me that wants to wait for Neil to see it and to get his view on it.
Here he goes. Oh my God, what's happening? Look at his face.
Yeah, I'm not even sure that he thought he weren't clearing it.
Where'd that come from, eh?
So anyway, Paul, resume.
Well, I mean, that stunned us all into... And that was after, 9 minutes?
Yeah,
and then the game sort of flitted around. Callum Riley hit the bar or post. It was very difficult to see where we were. He definitely hit the woodwork. And
it was the bar.
Was it the bar?
Watching it now, like an expert.
Oh, okay. And then...
You can adjudicate on what we say, Neil. If every time that Paul is like, yeah, that happened, you'd be like, no, I've just seen it and it actually wasn't.
Challenge accepted.
And unsurprisingly, between two very, very poor football teams on a very poor football pitch, it sort of meandered for the rest of the half where not a lot really happened, but you could sort of tell that the biggest issue that both teams had on the day, not only was their defence not the best, but also both goalkeepers didn't look like they were really on top form. And then, the other thing that was quite interesting about the first half is, quite early on, Nathan Clark did a really wild, rash tackle that took out, I'm assuming, Oldham's best player, because they've been winning games recently, and they were pretty poor after this guy went off. And he got away with that, even a talking to from the ref. And then Gadjev did another pretty bad hack, which was, I think, I've seen red cards for similar things, but he only got away with a yellow. So at least we were trying to do reducers on the flair players of Oldham.
Oh, Jesus.
And then at half-time, it was like, it's cold, it's miserable, but, it's 1-1, this could go either way. And then the second half...
Sorry, Kwame, put one in. Look how angry he is. Sorry, Paul.
Was it Ryan Haynes who crossed it? Can you confirm for the people?
6-foot ginger lad.
Yeah.
Ryan Haynes. Confirmed.
Yeah. No ponytail or number 10 jersey or anything like that, yeah?
No moustache.
Shadow, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then they had a free kick, and they pumped the ball into the box, and Reece Charles Cook came for it, and you were like, oh, okay. And he had it in his hands, and then he didn't have it in his hands, and Oldham scored. And you looked at the referee and you thought, did he get a push? Didn't he get a push? Reece Charles Cook was convinced he had been pushed. Nathan Clark was convinced he'd been pushed. The other 9 COF players were less than impressed with this protesting to the referee monarchy. And I've seen it again, and I think he just drops it.
I can confirm it was shite.
Yeah. And then they had a throw-in, and a simple throw-in from the left. They threw it into the box. None of our players marked the guy who received the ball, who then slashed it just wide. And then they had another one on the right-hand side where they slashed it just across the goal. And then the guy picked the ball up in the centre midfield, drifted past some non-existent tackles, then sort of tried to play the ball to his mate who'd fallen over. But because his mate had fallen over, he just carried on running anyway to get onto the ball. And all of our players stood there going, what's he doing? And then he was through on goal. And then he just hit it through Reece Charles Cook. And they were 3-1 up. And
I can confirm it was shite.
Yeah. And Oldham have only scored 17, well, up until that day, 17 league goals this season.
Oh, God.
I think that was the first time they'd scored 3 since 2015.
Who was it?
And then
I thought they scored 5 recently. Was it maybe? Oh no, it was Bury. Was it that? Yeah,
Bury,
of course,
Bury scored 5 recently. So Oldham were 3-1 up, and their fans were looking in stunned awe at how bad a football team can be. Then we brought Kwame Thomas on, and we went 4-4-2. And Anthony Gerrard and Peter Clark were back for the 2 centre halves, which, if Yakubu had started, would probably look about the same size as Anthony Gerrard, who's a bit fat. And Peter Clark's probably the same age as Doug Guy. So, they're back, the centre-back partnership are quite old and immobile. And it's obviously, because they're playing against Doug Guy, they didn't have to do a lot of moving. But at least when Kwame Thomas came on, he started to push them around a bit and move them and run the channels a little bit and, tried to bring others into the game, and we suddenly looked like a team with something to play for again. Ryan Haynes puts the ball in, Kwame Thomas heads the ball into the corner. I think only our 3rd headed league goal from open play in about 18 years. And suddenly you thought, we're into this. And then George Thomas hit the post, or was that before the goal?
Well, let's just take a step back for Kwame Thomas's goal. I felt really, really happy for him because, one, like you say, when he came on, was trying, wasn't he? But secondly, it was a really it was a really good cross, weren't it? It was a really, really good cross. But it's a really good header. That was another one that I think, it was a really good goal. I think it's probably worth reflecting on the fact. I didn't want you to gloss over that too quickly. I was really pleased for him. I was really pleased for Haynes, who I'm glad is, of all the players that we were talking about not continuing from the other day, I do think I'm really happy that he is now getting a run of games, and it does seem to be working for him. He is now... There was talk of him going to Wolves, weren't there? He's getting some of the recognition that I think we were hoping he'd get. And it's a smashing cross. It's a good goal. Really pleased.
On another week, that probably would have been moment of the week, because it was a little bit of skill amongst the rest of it. But, then we just we don't really force like 10 corners, do we?
No.
We don't really put teams under pressure. Marcus Tugguy tried a 12-yard back heel, which went about a foot, and then hit the defender who was right behind him. And, once, again, if he hadn't scored that 25-yarder, I don't think Tugguy had another shot. So, basically, we limped to a 3-2 defeat. And 3-2 makes it sound really exciting. No, and it just wasn't.
Yeah, go
on. And so at least I feel like Slade's angry and he brought them in on Sunday and it's like, and it's like, well, yeah, but you've almost let them off too much now, and just going, they set a standard, like they gave you the opportunity. People like Jordan Turnbull went, I'm brilliant, and he should have gone, prove it against Oldham, and he didn't, and now it's just sort of, well, you've lost the momentum. That momentum we built up it was one game against a changed Wycombe team, but everyone talks about you need that one catalyst. And you had that catalyst. We might have lost even if it had played the defence that played against Wycombe. But the problem is, again, it's one of those things we'll never know. What we do know is as predicted by myself on this particular podcast last week, he bottled it and went for the back four that we knew he was going to go for. And 3 of those back four played bloody awfully. And whatever you try to do, however you try and, sum up Russell Slade's time at Coventry, he finally had something to build on for the first time, and he didn't, and he blew it.
Yeah, it was tragically disappointing, wasn't it? The only thing that I wanted to kind of chip in terms of my own input into how the game went was there was a period in the second half where I turned to you and I said, which way round are they? Is it Peter Clark number 5? And you were like, yeah. And I said, actually, I feel like Clark especially has had quite a good game. And you said, well, what exactly has he had to do? And when I thought about it, them two have probably got a combined age of about 70, haven't they? And that we really did make it so tremendously easy for them. 2 defenders that you really feel like could have been got at in one way or another. Either that we tried to do them in the same way that we did at the first half of last season, where they'd got 2, leaden-hooved centre-halves, and you try and do them with Jody Jones and Ruben Lamiras and nippier players in around them that they can't get, or that you try something, but actually we just didn't. They didn't have to. It wasn't even like they had to fight a physical battle that they won. They just didn't really do anything. They were able to just pull crosses out of the air because there was no striker around, or they were able to sort of amble upfield with the ball because there was no one pressing or chasing them or anything. It was just, it didn't actually feel anywhere near as bad as you two have painted it in recent weeks, but it just felt so fucking hopeless all the time.
I think that's, when Russ said, they didn't commit the game plan, you're like, well,
what was the game plan?
What was? Yeah. Because you've got, I said, it looked to me like he was playing 4-3-3, but it was a case, I think on the radio, again in the CT, they might have gone for a 4-4-2 and they sort of had Rose on the right wing, or it was some bizarre, but it was clearly like there was a back four, then it was Gadjev, then it was Rose and Riley either side of him, then George Thomas right, and Carl Reid left and took a guy through the middle. And that's sort of understandable, but you know that Carl Reid never gets into the box. And he's done his pass to George Thomas. You're not going to get anything out of Carl Reid now for about 10 games. So don't bother. Try something else. But there are certain players who are underperforming week in, week out. And he is one of those players who, regardless of what I think of him, what other people think of him, there's no denying he's not scoring, he's not creating. So how's he keeping his place in the team? And there's just, going back to the Chesterfield game where I don't think he's been dropped since, but he's done one moment in 6 games. And I don't know, I said with the Yakubu thing, I don't mind Yakubu if he was a different type of player, but I don't see how if you put Yakubu up front with Tudguy on Saturday, I don't see how that makes us a better team.
Well, the problem is we haven't seen him, and it's that the hope that kills you. When we signed Stephen Hunt and when we signed Peter Ramage and all them last season, they never had the quality that he had, did they? Even at their very top, they weren't as good as Yakubu. Yakubu scored 95 goals in the Premier League, which is astonishing, isn't it? But the likelihood is that he's going to be crap. So I'm trying to enjoy, not even really the signing, but it's the hope, it's like the joy of the thought of him not being rubbish to start off with. But in reality, yeah, it's almost certain that he's going to be rubbish. I don't feel like the problem that we've had in recent weeks, albeit that I've not been in many recent weeks, but certainly was exemplified by Oldham, it wasn't that we were creating all these chances and spurning them. We're just not creating any particularly good chances, are we? And I think he, if anything, is somebody who, at best, might be able to clean up scraps where the ball drops for him. But I'm not convinced there's that there for him, is there?
But also, I understand that he's a better level than the players. But we also did bring in Joe Cole from Villa, who hadn't basically retired. And how long did it take Joe Cole to get up to match fitness?
Yeah, a lot. Well, did he ever, I guess is the question.
And that's the thing. It's just, I understand. I think for me, it goes back to what I was saying last week about the whole playing Dion Kelly-Evans for Foley. If we were like 2 points off, you're like, it's a gamble, but because we're so far adrift, it just feels like it doesn't benefit. If it works, which I don't think it will, I don't think it's going to. I don't think it's going to work. I think that's my issue. Even like if he scored 20 goals and kept us up, it's like, well, if he did that, then he'd have earned a new contract next season, and clearly he's going to still be. The potential he's going to be good enough for next season. But because I just don't see it working, it's almost like, well, just give that kid, the under 18, the 18-year-old kid who's rattling shitloads in the youth team a chance, because next season he might be third choice striker and might be what we need. I think it's just this. It just seems a signing for the sake of making it. Oh, there's this lad who once played in the Premier League. We haven't played in the Premier League what, 3 or 4 years, or is it 3 years?
I think it's probably more than that. On the subject of the young lad, just quickly, I spoke to Kev Monks at half time. Did you hear what he said?
No.
Well, he was talking about. I asked him about. I said, "You must have seen a fair bit of that Ponticelli because I think he goes to everything, doesn't he?" He said, "Yeah, I've seen a fair bit of him." He said, "I'd rate him roughly along the same talent line as maybe someone like Sean Jeffers." He said he's scored an absolute buttload of goals, but he's not. He said the quality of the teams they're playing at the moment is so much lower than what he's used to seeing that he wasn't having a go. And I hope to God that no one thinks I'm poo-hooing him, but it seems to be a question that comes up. I mean, hopefully he's a lad with a really bright future, and he chose to come to Cov, and I think he's a Cov family and everything. I think he sounds like a really, really bright prospect. But I was interested in hearing that actually, we got to be careful not to get ahead of ourselves with him. I don't think he is anywhere near the level of the first team. Even physically, maybe just needs to sort of mature and bulk up. But I understand what you're saying.
Isn't it?
It's not. I guess as well. You're not. He's almost totemic of what you're talking about. He's or emblematic. Sorry, is that you're saying maybe you pick like the team that will go into next season. You try and work out who. Maybe like the core 6 players that will still be here next season and worthwhile persevering with, and play them in spite of whether they're the best players that we've got.
Yeah, I mean, I know this isn't overly popular between the three of us, but my philosophy now is this season's gone. I just can't, because we'd have to win. I mean, I know I talked about 50 points last week, but even with the fixtures coming up over the next 2 match days, as it's now known, like tomorrow we've got AFC Wimbledon away, but I think both Bury and Oldham are at home against teams they've got a chance to beat, and then away at the weekend, I think Bury are at Oldham and Oldham at Chesterfield. No, Bury are at Chesterfield and Oldham at Swindon or something. And if both of those teams win one more game, and we don't beat AFC Wimbledon and we don't beat Gillingham, which is, I think, we've got to win at least one of them. We're going to be even, 5 wins off staying up. It just becomes so unrealistic because teams do bounce back from being in the relegation zone, but not normally from this far adrift and overtake everyone. Normally it's the team that's like, oh, we're just in the bottom 3, but we've been so bad for so long. And I think the issue with the Oldham game is a bit like the Chesterfield game. It's a bad side we've been beaten by. And there's just no way of seeing how we're going to turn that around. So I don't see how a 34-year-old's going to make it any better. I agree with those who say it ain't going to make it any worse because, how could it? But when does it start being just you're playing players for the sake of playing players?
I think there's a lot of that, isn't there? Neil, we've had a lot of questions. I'm going to throw it over to you if that's okay. We've had a lot of questions asking, I alluded to this at the start, about what you would do with Slade now. Thoughts?
I'm always torn with these questions because it's like the pantomime of a manager versus there's a bloke there with a job. So
yeah,
he's just got a job. I can stand here and sort of witch on about, I don't think he's good enough for the job and that, but it just feels a little bit harsh saying, I'd sack the bloke. But if I've just got my I'm on a football podcast pantomime hat on, I didn't want him when he came. I don't think he's done anything in any sense to kind of radicalise the team or change it, or he's just not brought anything different or seemingly progressive to the team. And I don't want him as our manager. And I feel terrible saying stuff like that because we've only just got him. But I just don't think he's the radical change that we need, either culturally or tactically or managerially or anything, to actually turn this football club around. We need something drastic, a completely different approach to what we've done. And to be honest, he's no difference. And by different, I mean kind of, it hasn't changed anything to what Venus was doing. All he's done is kind of he's almost treading water, and he's just, I'll change that a little bit. But it's not what we need. We need an absolute clear direction. And I don't sense anything from him. So, sorry, Russell Slade, lovely bloke, but I wouldn't have him as my Coventry City manager. And I know the question then comes, who would you have? Well, who would come? It's Coventry City and we play at the Ricoh Arena. I'm pretty sure there are good managers out there. It doesn't have to be a name. League 2 managers are probably going to bring something different to the table. I'm not a manager snob. I just want someone who has got a clear idea and kind of got the tools within themselves to actually try and implement it.
It's really, really difficult, isn't it? Because like you say, you don't want to say, I want a person to lose their job. And as well, talking about it after I make it 11 games in total, is it that 11? Well, am I wrong there? Am I wrong? Whatever it is. Either way, it's less than 15, isn't it? Under normal circumstances, if someone said, that football team, their fans are saying sack their manager after that many games, I'd be like, they're dicks. You can't tell anything after that amount of games. But sometimes you can. Do you know what I mean?
Just look at it. Just look at what we're doing on the football pitch at the moment and the decisions that he makes, which just go against all rhyme or reason. It's just, come on.
This is a bit of a crazy thing to say, and obviously it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but I think you'll understand what I mean. I'm not sure I can ever really forgive him for selling Marvin Sordell. Do you know what I mean?
I do get what you're saying. I do. Yeah.
You're the
balmy.
A club in the state that we were in, and you sell him so you can bring in a striker who doesn't score goals, who is good. Don't get me wrong. By the sounds of it, he seems like a good player. But you sell your only striker that scores goals to replace him with a striker that doesn't score goals, and a midfielder that is arguably not as good as the 2 young midfielders that he's keeping out of the team. Yeah. I just kind of go, I think I've seen enough.
Yeah, where's the message? Where's the positive message? Where we look at this, he's losing every game, and we look at that as and we say, oh, we've got to give him a chance. We've got to give him a chance to do what? To lose even more games. It's not good. This you can't just keep waiting and waiting with blind faith that it's going to get better. It is football after all. We've seen our players at points, every single player on that pitch, apart from the ones he's brought in, actually, we've seen play well. So it's not like they don't have it in them. It's just, I don't know. I don't like to blame the manager all the time.
I know.
When it seems so kind of what he does I just don't agree with anything he does. I just can't agree with it. Everything he does baffles me.
He should have won a league game by now, shouldn't he? I think that's
that first period of 4 games, which is bollocks as well, weren't it?
Yeah, go on, Paul.
Ian Palmer asked, simple one for me, despite our cup success, should Slade be in the job? Should we look to start from Mike Smith? Should we look to sack Slade now or wait till the summer? You know, most of the questions are basically, Simon Fay, is Thorne better or worse than Slade? It's just,
I think a lot of people have made up their own minds, haven't they?
From Steve is, what is Slade's brief, do you think? Is it about saving us from the drop or something else? I think Joey responded to that, what else could it be? I mean, the thing is, you look at, I don't have the technology at hand to tell you what it was, but one thing I do know for sure, when he took over, we weren't 4 wins from safety. And I think the biggest thing for me isn't the fact that there's multiple things. It's the fact that we brought him in, and we talk about this a lot, of that ultimate time. You bring someone in before the transfer window, and at least a game or 2 before the transfer window, so they can come in, we'll have videos of every COF game. So if you wanted to, you come in and watch a video of every single COF game, so he could completely be up to speed before his first game in charge. Or some managers do come in and basically look at it with completely new eyes, not ignoring everything that's gone before. But you still had, I think he joined on the 21st of December, so he had 10 days before the transfer window. And then, because he must have known the situation Coventry was in. So, again, a bit like when Mark Robbins turned up, he made some signings straight away of players he'd had in mind to bring in, basically wherever he was going to go. But he had an idea of the players he was going to bring in. So you almost, you must have some sort of clue what's going on. And then you've got 31 days to implement that. And then if you want to completely overhaul the style of play, which is what he's done, you've got the 31 days to bring in players. Now, without going over an old theme, we are bottom of League One. So the options of the players you're going to bring in aren't going to be top quality. But again, you can bring in players who have either failed at their old club, but you know they're going to be a success, or you think, I saw something in them in previous time that under a different manager and the style of football I want to play, exactly. I'll get the best out of them. But just bring in players that and Joey made a really salient point. Just because you manage someone at 28 in their prime doesn't mean they're going to be the same player when they're 33. And that's what I feel with Nathan Clark. I understand the theory behind Nathan Clark, but you watch it and it doesn't make sense. So is he just past it? Has his legs gone? Is he just not? Was he never very good in the first place? Isn't he helped by the fact that the players around him aren't particularly good? All these things are unanswerable, but the main fact is, and I had a discussion with someone on Twitter about it on Saturday, was he said, for him, Nathan Clark and Jordan Turnbull should be the centre-back partnership, and there are other issues. I agree with that, but the whole point of Nathan Clark signing was Nathan Clark solves one of the problems we have. And the problem is, we're now sort of into the middle of February discussing whether or not Nathan Clark should be in the team. And that signing was meant to solve that. That was the whole point of bringing him in, was we didn't, you didn't discuss that anymore. It was, who's going to start? Well, Nathan Clark starts. We've got too few players who are good enough and are performing well enough to start every game. But there again, he doesn't seem to be able to motivate the players who are in the team to give him better performances.
Does anyone know where Biggie went?
The bench?
He had an injury, didn't he? I think he did have an injury.
Does he still have an injury? Is this the
No, I think he was
notorious?
On the bench. I think he was on the bench on Saturday.
Is this the Coventry City player Bermuda Triangle of injuries, where Chris Stokes fell through and never been seen
What
again?
is happening to him, eh? Where's he gone?
I don't know about you, but if I was him at the moment, I'd be like, nah, you're all right. My leg still hurts.
But Biggie might not be the sort of player he wants to bring. He obviously brought in Callum Riley to do a particular role. Now, he's good at closing players down. If I'm going to give Callum Riley a positive, he's very good at closing players down, and he has a good engine. But he doesn't have a very good touch, which I quite like in my midfielders.
And he's not ours again, is he?
No, and the thing is, it's unlikely that he will be ours next season. Even if Burton didn't want to keep him, it's unlikely he'd drop down to League Two. Even though it's probably, having watched him, his level doesn't seem to be League One.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'd be good in League Two, does it?
No. Sorry, one of my other favourite questions, because I think this is virtually unanswerable, so I'm going to ask it anyway. Sam Woods asked, who has been our player of the season and why?
Neil, do you want to start?
Ben Stevenson, because he's the only one who, when he plays, can probably be pleased with the quality that he demonstrates in every game he plays. It's not like he might have games where he's not available and he's kind of not as prominent as he normally is, but when he's on the ball and when he does stuff in isolation, he plays as well as I guess he can play. So yeah, Ben Stevenson clearly for consistency and just quality.
I would agree with you, but just for the sake of having a different answer and just to sort of stick the boot in a bit more, Marvin Sordell. Partly because I think when he first came through, I was quite rude about him and his skill level and his past. And actually, when he left, I really miss him. I think he was quite good. I think in a better team, actually, we very rarely put him through the middle, and he still scored goals. Yeah. And I think he demonstrated that he'd got quite a diverse ability as a striker. I felt like he could play off the wing, but it wasn't his best position. But he looked like he was strong to a level, could hold the ball up to a level. He wasn't Pele, obviously, but he was a very competent League One striker, and the sort of level of player that, far transcends most of the players in that squad at the moment. And I think, actually, it's a rare example of somebody who came in with a lot to prove, and I think he did it. I think after getting relegated with Colchester and scoring so few goals, he'd probably got to prove a lot of people wrong. And I feel like he did, and fair play to him.
Yeah, I've got a different opinion of him from those first few games. Now, what did you say? It's looking dicey, Marvin. I've got that always sticks in my mind. But he turned it around, and I'm not you. I miss him. Just because it just gives the team a completely different dynamic. When you've got him up front, you can then be a little bit more creative with the players you play around him. You probably don't have to play Carl Reed as much because you've got Marvin Sordell up front. But almost from an experience point of view, I feel like Slade has to play Reed at the moment because it's kind of, Carl Reed, he's 30, got to play him. But whereas if you have Sordell in there, I don't know, he's younger, it just changes things. Changes everything, and then you can work the system a little bit more.
What about you, Paul? Do you want to round it off by going for your player of the season, and then we'll call it a day?
Yeah, I think you two basically picked the only two players you could. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have seen more of Ryan Haynes from the start. I think he's improving. I thought when he was on it, and I did say this at the time, I thought Chris McCann was very good. I know he had some games, he had one particular game where he just didn't look like he was interested at all, but he did have some very good games, and like Callum Riley's just a very poor version of Chris McCann. and I did say it'd be difficult to replace, and I think he's proven to be, but he had some good games. And alongside him, when Biggie and Stevenson worked together, which very few and far between, probably for about that 1 month between the 1st of October and the 1st of November, when we won all 4 of our league games.
I thought you were going to say that one game. Where
no, I think those, they only had a spell where the 4 of them played together more often than not, and I think it was that spell around then before different players got injured. So, yeah, I think, but other than that,
why are we doing this again? Why are we doing Player of the Season in February?
Well, I think people are just, because this time last year, if we'd have gone, who's your Player of the Year, you could have rattled off about 6 players who had really good seasons. Or people like Ben Turner, who'd come in, even though they only played 5 or 6 games, had a really positive impact. And this season, even though we've used about 35 players again, we're scrapping around for like 4 or 5. I don't think Lee Burgess done much wrong. I know he doesn't seem to be Flavour of the Month again, but I think he's had a relatively, good season.
Neil, you can answer one of the following 2 questions. Who is your favourite player in each of the last 15 seasons? Or who are your 15 favourite players from this season?
Oh, God. Don't make me answer it. I will, because I will do it and I'll be here.
I'm only joking, of course. I do think that is. I do think that's weirdly is like a sort of weird question and an answer in itself. Is why are we doing Player of the Year in February again? Is that that might sum up this season in a line.
Nutshell, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah. Does anyone have anything else that we want to go through before we wrap up? That sounds like a no. Right. Before we go, I want to tell you about a competition that we're running via Twitter. There is a fabulous artist at Hallyyink, HALLYINK, who does wicked prints of all different football clubs. We've given 2 away so far as competition prizes, and we'll be doing the same again with another 2 this time round. Both brilliant designs. Head to at Nii Lamptey Show, which is our Twitter address, and at Hallyyink, and you'll find details of how to win those. That'll run for the next week or so get involved with that. That's free and it's ace. If you want, you can just go to hallyyink.com, I think it is, or I actually might double check that. But if you just Google Hallyyink, HALLYINK, you'll be able to see his designs there. Some really genuinely, really nice Cov ones. Well worth a look. If you want to get in touch with us, like I say, it's at Nii Lamptey Show on Twitter, or it's neelampteyshow@gmail.com. And we're on Facebook, apparently.
Yes.
And, all sorts of different stuff going on like that. We're going to be back next week with CJ, who's been on before, who's part of the Sky Blue Trust. He's going to be talking about Wimbledon, but also he'll be talking about all things Trust. So if you want to get involved and ask some questions of him, then you've got a chance to do so beforehand. And I think, apart from that, that's probably everything. So thank you, Neil.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you. Bye.